I'm going to talk to you today on Questions to Ponder about a question that is so relevant to every one of you who are listening, no matter where you are, no matter where you are in America or some other part of the world. Here's a question that we do have to discuss. How do Christians respond when there's social unrest? And here's the question from the Bible that addresses that. It's Psalm 56 and verse 8. Psalm 56 and verse 8. You may have never read this verse before. You have kept count of my tossings and put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? David is speaking to God. You have kept count of my tossings. Have you ever tossed and turned at night, so upset you couldn't sleep? He said, you have kept count. You know how many times I've done that. You've put my tears in your bottle. God has a bottle for our tears. In other words, he takes note of our weeping. Are they not in your book? God keeps a record of our pain and our heartache and our sadness. I want to talk about other people's pain. Here's 3 responses that you and I can or should have towards other people's pain. The 3 words are this: sympathize, empathize, identify. To sympathize means to feel sorry for. You look at a situation and you feel so sorry for those people caught up in a flood or an earthquake or some act of violence. You feel sorry for them. To empathize means you feel sorry with them. Somehow their plight, their circumstance, their situation could be a friend of yours, a coworker, maybe something terrible, the death of a loved one, and you have tears in your eyes because you empathize. You feel sorry with them. The greatest challenge is the 3rd word, to identify. To identify with a person's situation means that you've been there yourself. You have had that experience. You can identify. That's not always the case. For instance, people who have grown up in poverty can identify with people who are still in poverty. They identify with that. If you've not, I didn't grow up in poverty. My father was a blue-collar factory worker his whole life. So was his father and uncles and all. So it was a very lower middle-class blue-collar family, but we never missed a meal. I really can't identify experientially with somebody who goes to bed hungry night after night. How about men who have been in combat? We have men in our church, and you know people, maybe in your family, who were in the war, some in the Second World War, the Korean War, Vietnam. I have Vietnam vets in my church. Some who have been in Afghanistan or Iraq, more recent wars. And they have had buddies, friends, colleagues, comrades die in combat. Some have been wounded. Some have had live ammunition around them. They can identify with a soldier's pain and things like PTSD because they've been there. How about a family experience? In the narrative of our day right now, somebody who has been, they feel, the victim of racism or prejudice in some context, or an act of violence against them or a loved one, they identify. Some of us can't identify, but we can sympathize and we can empathize. How do we then, as followers of Jesus Christ, respond to social crisis in our day? Let me give you this 3 verses of scripture and then we'll be done. Number 1, discern when you should speak and say something and when you should be quiet and just listen. Here's what the Bible tells us in James chapter 1 and verse 19. Jesus' brother, James, says this: be quick to listen. Be quick to listen. Don't immediately default by sharing your feelings, your thoughts, your opinion. Be quiet. Be quick to listen. Be slow to speak. If you're not sure what to say, don't say anything. And be slow to anger. Don't get so defensive that you become angry. And if you had listened, you might have had more compassion and not been so quick to fight back and to argue. Secondly, live out the mandate of Jesus. If you're a follower of Jesus, this is who he says you and I are. Identify with this. You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. Let your light shine before men. You're the salt of the earth. Salt enhances flavor and it keeps things from rotting. Just your presence should make things better. Light illuminates and chases away darkness. There's a lot of darkness encroaching on our world this very day. The darkness of violence, the darkness of hatred, the darkness of anger. We need to dispel the light of the love of God, because that's our job if you're a follower of Jesus. And thirdly, and lastly, listen to the Jewish rabbi, Paul, known as Saul of Tarsus. Ephesians 4:32, be ye kind one to another. We don't have to agree with each other. We don't have to all see things the same way. Obviously, we don't have all the same experiences, but we're called to be kind one to another. Just be kind will make an incredible difference, bringing peace in our world in this time of turmoil. Here's the closing thoughts. Even though we can empathize and sympathize and not always identify, because it's not our life experience, in many things, let me tell you, here is the one area you and I, all of us, anywhere in the world, can identify with. You're a sinner, and you're only saved by God's grace. Paul put it this way, writing to the church at Rome, chapter 3 and verse 23. He said, all have sinned, and we've come short of the glory of God. I can identify with that. I'm a sinner, and so are you. I've missed the mark of God's perfect will, but I'm so glad that by God's grace we can be forgiven. We can be restored to right relationship with Him, peace with ourselves, and right relationship with other people. We can identify as sinners. So on this day, my prayer for you, when there's upheaval and challenges all over the globe, act like a Christian if you are one. Be kind to one another. Be slow to speak, but be quick to listen, and be very slow to answer. And make sure that you're acting with the compassion of Jesus Christ to brothers and sisters who are also trying to find their way and find peace in these challenging days. God bless you as you ponder this question over the coming week.